Hello, Junior Squirrels. GrannyDee here, ready to read. East of the sun and west of the moon is our story today. Oh, goodness gracious, about to forget our most important accessory in reading stories. Once on a time, there was a poor woodcutter who had so many children he didn't have much food or clothing to give them. Pretty children they all were, but the prettiest was the youngest daughter, who was so lovely there was no end to her loveliness. So one day, 'twas on a Thursday evening, like today, late at the fall of the year, the weather was wild and rough outside, and it was cruelly dark, and rain fell and wind blew till the walls of the cottage shook. There they all sat round the fire, busy with this thing and that. Suddenly something gave 3 taps on the window pane. Then the father went out to see what was the matter, and what should he see but a great big white bear. "Good evening to you," said the white bear. "Same to talking bear. "The same to you," said the man. "Will you give me your youngest daughter? If you will, I will make you as rich as you are now poor," said the bear. Well, the man would not be at all sorry to be rich, but still, he thought he must have a bit of a talk with his daughter, so he went in and told how there was a great white bear waiting outside, who had given his word to make them so rich if he could only have the youngest daughter. The lassie said no, outright. Nothing could get her to say anything else, so the man went out and settled it with the white bear, that he should come again the next Thursday evening and get an answer. Meantime, he talked to his daughter over and kept telling her of all the riches they would get and how well off she would be herself. And so at last she thought better of it and washed and mended her rags, made herself as smart as she could, and was ready to start. I can't say her packing gave her much trouble. She didn't have much to pack. Next Thursday evening came the white bear to fetch her, and she got upon his back with her bundle, and off they went. So when they had gone a bit of the way, the white bear said, "Are you afraid?" No, she wasn't. "Well, mind and hold tight by my shaggy coat, and then there's nothing to fear," said the bear. So she rode a long, long way till they came to a great steep hill. There, on the face of it, the white bear gave a knock, and a door opened, and they came into a castle, where there were a good many rooms all lit up, rooms gleaming with silver and gold, and there too was a table laid ready, and it was all as grand could be. Then the white bear gave her a silver bell, and when she wanted anything, she was only to ring it, and she would get it at once. Well, after she had eaten and drunk and evening wore on, she got sleepy after her journey and thought she would like to go to bed. So she rang the bell, and she had scarce taken hold of it before she came into a chamber where there was a bed made as fair and white as anyone would wish to sleep in, with silken pillows and curtains and gold fringe. But when she had put out the light and gone to bed, she heard someone enter the room opposite hers. It was the white bear, who threw off his enchanted form at night, but she never saw him, for he always came after her room was dark, and before the day dawned he was up and away again. So things went on happily for a while, but at last she began to get silent and sorrowful. One day the white bear came to her and said, "Lassie, what is it that you want? Everything in the castle is yours. Only be happy, and above all trust in me, and no harm will come to you." But the lassie, try as she might, could not forget the one thing that bothered her. Who was it that entered the opposite room every night and left it before dawn? One night she could stand it no longer, and at the dead of night, when he was sleeping, she got up and lit a candle and opened the door of his room. There she saw the loveliest prince. Were you thinking that? I was. One had ever set eyes on, and she went over and kissed him. But as she did so, she dropped 3 drops of hot tallow on his shirt. That's like wax from a candle. And he woke up. "What have you done?" he cried. "Now you have made us both unlucky. For if you had held out only this 1 year, I would have been freed. For I have been bewitched by a wicked witch, so that I am a white bear by day and a man by night. But now I must set off from you to her. She lives in a castle that stands east of the sun and west of the moon, and there too is a princess with a nose 3 ells long, and she is the wife I must have now." I don't know what ells are. ELLS. She wept, but there was no help for it. Go he must. Then she asked him if she mightn't go with him. No, she mightn't. "Tell me the way then," she said, "and I will search for you. That surely I might get leave to do." Yes, she might do that, he said, but there was no way to the place. It lay east of the sun and west of the moon, and thither she would never find her way. So next morning when she woke up, both prince and castle were gone, and there she lay on a little green patch in the midst of the gloomy thick wood, and by her side lay the same bundle of rags she had brought with her from her old home. So when she had rubbed the sleep out of her eyes, and wept till she was tired, and set out on her way, and walked many, many days till she came to a lofty crag. Under it sat an old hag, and played with a gold apple which she tossed about. Her the lassie asked if she knew the way to the prince in the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon, and who was to marry the princess with a nose 3 ells long. "How did you come to know about him?" asked the old hag. "But maybe you are the lassie who ought to have had him?" Yes, she was. So it's you, is it?" said the old hag. "Well, all I know about him is that he lives in the castle that lies east of the sun and west of the moon, and thither you'll come, late or never, but still you may have the loan of my horse, and on him you can ride to my next neighbor. Maybe she'll be able to tell you, and when you get there, just give the horse a switch under the left ear and beg him to be off home, and stay this gold apple you may take with you." So she got upon the horse and rode a long, long time, till she came to another crag, under which sat another old hag with a gold carding comb. Her the lassie asked if she knew the way to the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon, and she answered like the first old hag, that she knew nothing about it except it was east of the sun and west of the moon, and thither you'll come late or never, but you shall have the loan of my horse to my next neighbor. Maybe she'll tell you all about it, and when you get there, just switch the horse under the left ear and beg him to be off home." And this old hag gave her the gold carding comb. It might be she'd find some use for it, she said. So the lassie got up on the horse and rode a far, far way, and a weary time, and so at last she came to another great crag, under which sat another old hag, spinning with a golden spinning wheel. Her too she asked if she knew the way to the prince, and where the castle was that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. So it was the same thing over again. "Maybe it's you who ought to have had the prince," said the old hag. Yes, it was. But she too didn't know the way a bit better than the other two. East of the sun and west of the moon it was, she knew, that was all. And thither you'll come late or never, but I'll lend you my horse. And then you'd best ride to the east wind and ask him. Maybe he knows these parts and can blow you thither. But when you get to him, you need only give the horse a switch under the left ear, and he'll trot home of himself. And so, too, she gave her the golden spinning wheel. Maybe you'll find a use for it, said the old hag. Then on she rode many, many days, a weary time, before she came to the east wind's home. But at last she did reach it, and then she asked the east wind if he could tell her the way to the moon, the way to the prince who dwelt east of the sun and west of the moon. Yes, the east wind had often heard tell of it, the prince and the castle, but he couldn't tell the way because he had never blown so far. But if you will, I'll go with you to my brother of the west wind. Maybe he knows, for he's much stronger. So if you will just get on my back, I'll carry you thither. Yes, she got on his back, and I should just think they went briskly along. So when they arrived there, they went into the west wind's house, and the east wind said the lassie he had brought was the one who ought to have had the prince who lived in the castle, east of the sun, west of the moon. And so she had set out to seek him, and how he had come with her, and would be glad to know if the west wind knew how to get to the castle. Nay, said the west wind, so far I've never blown, but if you will, I'll go with you to our brother the south wind, for he's much stronger than either of us, and he has flapped his wings far and wide. Maybe he'll tell you. You could get on my back, and I'll carry you to him. Yes, she got on his back, and so they traveled to the south wind, and weren't so very long on the way, I should think. When they arrived there, the west wind asked him if he could tell her the way to the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon, for it was she who ought to have had the prince who lived there. You don't say so. That's she, is it? Said the south wind. Well, I have blustered about in most places in my time, but so far have I never blown. But if you will, I'll take you to my brother the north wind. He's the oldest and strongest of the whole lot of us, and if he doesn't know where it is, you'll never find anyone in the world to tell you. You can get on my back, and I'll carry you thither. Over and over and over again. Woo! I thought this was a short story, but it's not. Yes, she got on his back, and away he went from his house at a fine rate, and this time, too, she wasn't long on her way. So when they arrived at the north wind's house, he was so wild and cross. Cold puffs came from him a long way off. Well, well, what do you want? He roared out to them ever so far off that it struck them with an icy shiver. Well, said the south wind, you needn't be so gruff, for here I am, your brother the south wind, and here is the lassie who ought to have had the prince who dwells in the castle that lies east of the sun and west of the moon. And now she wants to ask you if you ever were there, and can you tell her the way, for she would be so glad to find him again. Yes, I know enough where it is. I know well enough where it is. Okay, said the north wind. Once in my life I blew an aspen leaf thither, but I was so tired I couldn't blow a puff for ever so many days after. But if you really wish to go and aren't afraid to come along with me, I'll take you on my back and see if I can blow you thither. Yes, with all her heart, she must and would go thither if it were possible in any way, and as for fear, however madly he went, she wouldn't be at all afraid. Very well then, said the North Wind, but you must sleep here tonight, for we must have the whole day tomorrow before us, if we're to get thither at all. Early next morning the North Wind woke her, and puffed himself up, and blew himself out, and made himself so stout and big 'twas awesome to look at him. And so off they went, high up through the air, as if they never would stop till they got to the world's end. Down here below there was such a storm it threw down long tracts of wood and many houses, and when it swept over the great sea, ships foundered by the hundreds. So they tore on and on. No one can believe how far they went. And all the while they still went over the sea, and the North Wind got more and more weary, and so out of breath he could scarcely bring out a puff, and his wings drooped, till at last he sunk so low that crests of the waves dashed over his heels. Are you afraid? Said the North Wind. No, she wasn't. But they weren't very far from land, and the North Wind, I betcha, Wind had still so much strength left in him that he managed to throw her up on the shore under the windows of the castle, which lay east of the sun and west of the moon. But then he was so weak and wore out, he had to stay there and rest many days before he could go home again. Next morning the lassie sat down under the castle window and began to play with the golden apple. That the first person she saw was the long nose, and the first person she saw was the long nose who was to have the prince. What do you want for your golden apple, lassie? said the long nose, and threw up the window. It's not for sale for gold or money, said the lassie. If it's not for sale for gold or money, what is it that you will sell it for? You may name your own price, said the princess. Well, if I may speak alone to the prince who lives here, you shall have it, said the lassie whom the North Wind had brought. Yes, she might, that could be done. So the princess took the golden apple, but when the lassie came up to the prince's room, he was fast asleep. She called him, and she shook him, and between times she wept bitterly, but she couldn't rouse him. So the next day she sat down under the castle windows and began to card with her carding comb, and the same thing happened. The princess asked what she wanted for it, and she said it wasn't for sale for gold or money, but if she might get leave to go to the prince and speak alone with him, the princess should have it. But when she went up the road, she found him fast asleep again, and all she called, and all she shook and wept and prayed, and couldn't awaken him. So the next day the lassie sat down outside under the castle window and began to spin with the golden spinning wheel. And that too the princess with the long nose seemed, hang on. Wait a minute, so I sit down on the navigate. Threw up the window and asked, I don't know where I was. Let me go back. So the next day the lassie sat down outside under the castle window and began to spin with her golden spinning wheel, and that too the princess with the long nose wanted to have. So she threw up the window and asked what she wanted for it. The lassie said, as she had said twice before, it wasn't for sale for gold or money, but if she might speak a few words alone with the prince, she might have it. Yes, you might do that and welcome, but now you must know there were some other folk who had been carried off thither, and as they sat in their room, which was next to the prince, they heard how a lassie had been in there, and wept and prayed, and called to him 2 nights running. And they told that to the prince. That evening when the princess came with her sleepy drink, the prince made as if he drank, but threw it over his shoulder, for he could guess it was a sleepy drink. Had something in it to make him go to sleep. So when the lassie came in, she found the prince wide awake, and then she told him the whole story, how she had come hither. "Oh," said the prince, "you have just come in the nick of time, for tomorrow is to be our wedding day. Now, I won't have the long nose, and you are the only one in the world who can set me free. I'll say that I want to see what my wife is fit for and beg her to wash the shirt that has 3 spots of tallow on it. She'll say yes, for she doesn't know 'twas you who put them there. But that's a work only for you and not for such a pack of trolls. So I will say I won't have any other for my bride but the maiden who can wash them out, and I will ask you to do it." So the next day when the wedding was to be, the prince said, "First of all, I'd like to see what my bride is fit for." "Yes," said the witch with all her heart. "Well," said the prince, "I have a fine shirt, which I'd like for my wedding shirt, but it has 3 spots of tallow on it, which I must have washed out, and I have sworn never to take any other bride than the maiden who is able to do that. If she cannot, she's not worth having." Well, that was no great thing, they said, so they agreed. And she, with the long nose, began to wash away as hard as she could, but the more she rubbed and scrubbed, the bigger the spots grew. "Aye," said the old witch, her mother, "you cannot wash. Let me try." But she hadn't long taken the shirt in hand before it became far worse than ever. And with all her rubbing and wringing and scrubbing, the spots grew bigger and blacker, and the darker and uglier was the shirt. Then all the other trolls began to wash, but the longer they washed, the blacker and uglier the shirt grew, till at last it was as black all over as if it had been up the chimney. "Ah," said the prince, "you've none of you worth your straw. You can't wash. Why, there outside sits a beggar lassie. I'll bound she knows how to wash better than the whole lot of you. Come in, lassie," he shouted. Well, in she came. "Can you wash this shirt clean, lassie?" said he. "I don't know," she said, "but I think I can." And almost before she had taken it and dipped it in the water, it was as white as driven snow, and whiter still. "Yes, you are the lassie for me," said the prince. I was just laughing because you've got to be able to do your laundry before the prince will take you. At that, the old hag flew into such a rage, she burst on the spot, and the princess with the long nose after her, and the whole pack of trolls after her. At least, I've never heard a word about them since. As for the prince, he took the lassie, and they flitted away as far as they could from the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. The end. That was a strange story, I think. Gotta get that laundry done. Oh, I've lost my bookmark. Oh, here's one. It's the owl. I had been using it in my other book, but I'll use it in here. And you know what? GrannyDee has to take this book back Saturday. So let me see how many more stories we have. I just looked at my Of course, I can renew them if I need to. Snow White and Rose Red is the next story we'll read. Let's see. Guess I could look at the table of contents if there is one. Yep. Okay, great. Looks like we only have 2 more stories. So, what's today? Thursday. So there's one for Friday and one for Saturday, except I need to take it back on Saturday. So let's see how long they are. Probably long. Snow White and Rose Red. I haven't looked to see if I could find this same book on my Kindle. But if I can't, I bet I can find something close. Yep, it's Snow White and Rose Red is the next story, which is about 163. What page is this? 154, 153, 163. About 10 pages. And Billy Beg and His Bull is the last story. Let's see how many pages it is. From 168, and it's got one picture in it, so that doesn't count as a page. Let's see. What'd I say? 167 to 183, 167, 177, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83. About 15 and a half pages. Not too bad. Okay, I'll try tomorrow to read the last 2 stories. I may have to do it in 2 different times because I don't think I can read that much at one time. But that way, GrannyDee can take this book back. But I'll have to renew Little Women because we've got a lot more in there to go if you're following along with us with that book. And after this book, so on Sunday, we'll be ready to start a new book. And I've already shown you what it's going to be. Do you remember? And I'll have to renew it. Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I'm excited to read that. And I love this book. It has great pictures in it. And I'll show you those as we go along. This, the fairy tale book has a few pictures in it, but they're not all that great, I don't think. So, nice slick pages. Don't you just love to open up a good book? I even love to smell them. It's like sniffing yarn. Okay, GrannyDee's got a hat that I need to finish up, but I've been doing lots of other knitting and crocheting. But I'll let you go. Be sweet and don't be ugly. 2 stories tomorrow. Yay! And then a new book on Sunday. No, if I do 2 stories tomorrow, the new book will be on Saturday, won't it? Yep. Okay. Bye-bye. Love you.